Hello everybody, I'm Fabien and welcome back to Fab Motorbikes. This week I'll be showing you how to correctly adjust the chain on your motorcycle. And in my case, I'll be working on my Yamaha FZ6 Phaser. So why is adjusting your chain slack so important? Well, if your chain is too tight like this, it's going to cause excessive wear on your chainings and sprockets, meaning that's going to wear out quicker and cost you a lot more money. It's also, there is a risk that it may snap, which means it could whip round and rip your leg open or destroy your engine casing. It will also reduce or limit your swing arm travel, which causes handling problems and will make it a nightmare to ride. And when your chain is too loose, like this one, you run the risk of it coming off your sprockets and maybe locking up the rear wheel and causing an accident. You'll also get terrible transmission snatch when you open the throttle, let out the clutch or change gear. Basically, you'll get a jerky feeling and it'll make a really unpleasant ride. So let's get this chain adjusted. First up is to loose the axle nut. In my case, this is a 32mm nut. They're often very tough to undo, so you may need a long breaker arm, but I managed to do it with the kit that came with the bike. Now remember, this needs loosening, doesn't need to come out altogether. Now on all motorcycles, you add tension to the chain by effectively moving the rear wheel back millimeters at a time. And in my case, on the FZ6, you basically unscrew this screw here, and as it winds out, pushes the axle back. On most motorcycles, including this one, there's a locking nut here. So this nut here is purely there to ensure that this doesn't move. So you'll have to undo that one first. So what is a chain at the correct tension? Well, that will differ from bike to bike. In my case, on the FZ6, it's 45 to 55 mil of slack when the bike is on its center stand. But one thing that is universal across all motorcycles with chain drive is that you need to set the tension at the tightest point of the chain. There will be tight spots, loose spots based on general uneven wear, and you find that by basically rotating your wheel and looking for it. Here seems to be the tightest point. Another thing I feel is important to do is to make sure you are measuring at the dead center of the chain. As you can see, I've removed the front sprocket cover here just to sort of illustrate this. You don't really need to do this. But what you can do is take a measure, tape measure, and measure between the center of the front and the center of the rear sprocket. It doesn't have to be perfect, but here I'm getting roughly 70 centimeters. So I know the dead center between the two, where I should be taking my slack measurement, is at 35 centimeters, which is about here. So now I know I'm measuring at the tightest point of the chain and at the dead center between the two sprockets. So to get the most accurate adjustment, you find your center marker, what I've done here with this dirt mark here. You get your tape measure, put it up against the swing arm, and you measure from the top of the chain to the top of the chain. I'm getting just about 6 centimeters, and when it's up, I'm getting 2.5. 6 minus 2.5 is 35 mil. So obviously this chain is too tight. Another tip I'll give you is to make sure that when you are pushing the chain up and down, make sure that you get no movement on the upper section of the chain. If you do get movement there, you are robbing slack from the top of the chain, so you're not getting an accurate reading. So as you see here, if I push so hard that the top starts moving, you see that? I'm pushing too hard. If I'm pushing down, the top chain starts moving, I'm pushing too hard. So literally just enough so that it doesn't move. So this chain needs loosening off a little bit. And in my case, on the Yamaha FZ6, that involves winding this bolt back into the swing arm a tad. Quick tip to make sure everything shunts forward. Stick a lump of metal between the chain and sprockets and roll forwards. That will tighten up the chain and shunt the axle forwards that way a little bit. Once you've got your slack absolutely perfect, it's then time to go and lock off this side of the bike. And you do that by winding in this locking nut here. It's important because you've got it perfect to maintain the position of the adjuster bolt here and just wind in the locking nut and then lock it off. So you've adjusted the slack in your chain, got that perfect. It's now time to align your rear wheel so it's dead straight with the bike. Now there are so many crazy ways that people think you should do this, but really adjusting your axle block and comparing it to these notches on the swing arm is the best and only way. And my tip here on aligning the wheel is basically making sure that all the components in the swing arm are all shunted up against each other. And I actually mentioned this slightly before, but all you need to do that is stick something in the chain and sprockets and rotate the wheel. That tightens everything up in there and everything is shunted up against each other. And I can see that it's pretty much bang on that 4th larger line. Here I am on the other side, and I can see this side the axle is too far forwards. And once you've done that on both sides, double, triple check, quadruple check, just keep checking. It's a bit of a repetitious process, but it's worth doing to get this wheel perfectly in line with the bike. And when you're done, it's time to tighten everything up. That includes the 12mm locking nuts here on the other side, and of course the big old axle nut. When tightening this axle nut up, there can be the tendency for it to float backwards as you yank on it. So to mitigate that, you get something, as before, stick it in the sprocket, add some tension, shunt everything forwards. As you apply the initial pressure, job done. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you found this useful. Please give us a thumbs up, please subscribe, and I'll see you next week.